Welcome to Consultant Spotlight. This is the show where we take a look behind the curtain to help you get to know us and our consultants a little bit better. My name is John Hovey, and today I'll be talking with Courtney Berg, who's an experienced business consultant, also a Society for Human Resources Management Senior Certified Professional. So today we'll be taking a look at what's going on in her consulting practice right now. We'll have time to answer your human resources questions too. All right, so in the spotlight today, Courtney Berg. As I mentioned earlier, Courtney is an expert in business and human resources. She's a Society for Human Resources Management Senior Certified Professional. Hope I said that right, SCP. And boy, excited to talk to you today, Courtney. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks so much, John, for inviting me to visit with you today.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Welcome on the show. So let's dive right in. We'll talk about your background in a moment, but what's hot in the world of HR? Any news?
Wow, there's a lot of things going on in HR right now, as you might imagine. The most obvious thing is how COVID has impacted the workplace. The COVID-19 pandemic, I think, sent HR into a world that it really hadn't experienced before. So HR professionals are finding themselves dealing with remote workers, workers on site, so that hybrid work model, which has been challenging. You want to make sure that you're keeping those workers engaged and that you're making sure that they're getting the work done and that they have the tools that they need to get the work done. And so it's been challenging for HR and managers alike, honestly. The other thing, unfortunately, that we're seeing in the news, the tragedy that happened in Boulder on Monday, what happened in Georgia last week, and that is workplace violence. It's right now we have states all across the nation, unfortunately, who are dealing with workplace violence, and HR has to be concentrating on that. I mean, taking care of employees, providing that safe working environment, providing support to the employees and their families who were there. The employees who were there, and then their families, and the families that were impacted, as well as coworkers who weren't there. So the ones who, wow, I took today off, and this employee was there and experienced that because they worked my shift, and so some of those mental health issues that are happening and the stress that was happening. I want to mention, because this is so fresh in all of our minds, that Colorado has a crisis center, and so you can reach that crisis center at 844-493-8255. That's 844-493-8255, or just go to coloradocrisisservices.org, and they can help. And you can post that number. There are a lot of employers that don't have employee assistance programs, or maybe they don't have health insurance that at all, or they don't have health insurance that offers mental health benefits. So that Colorado Crisis Center is a way that they can solve that problem. But obviously, checking in with the team, talking to the employees, and dealing with these types of issues is important. So the COVID tragedy and pandemic and everything, all the stress that brought, plus now these workplace violence incidents, stress is a huge issue that HR is dealing with.
It absolutely is. And I'm glad that you brought that up about the Colorado hotline. And for our audience too, I can mention that, all of our SBDC consultants will be happy to help you, access resources as well. And so you can give us a call at the SBDC, and we can do our best to point you to the best resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, complicated times.
Absolutely challenging, very challenging. But I still think that HR can rise to the level of the challenge and help the employees and the managers deal with these issues as they arise, and hopefully proactively look toward preventing them.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned remote work. As you could tell, maybe I'm in my home studio.
Yep.
And
As am I. Yep.
all of our SBDC services at North Metro have been remote now for a full calendar year, and it looks like we're going to continue that way. So yeah, it's been an interesting period of growth and adjustment for us at the center, with our consultants and our clients as well. So I can sure appreciate that business owners are, they're looking for new HR approaches and
Mm.
solutions to manage that.
Absolutely. I think in the past, HR has been hesitant about remote work. I think that
Mhm.
we've just said, we want the employees here. We can better manage them. We can engage with them. We can have that day-to-day interaction face to face that's so important. And what we've learned over the pandemic is that, hey, guess what? It may be different mediums that we're using, and we may have to talk through, through our computer screens, but we can still engage and we can still have dialogues and we can still help each other, even though we're sitting in our own homes. So I think
I think
that's an important shift, and I think it's also a savings one for many small business owners who thought I've got to have an office where my people can go. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you can save some of that money and put that into maybe higher salaries or benefits or better equipment, or you know put it back into the business, right, into marketing, into sales, into those kinds of things to help build the business and build that book of business for you.
it's interesting. So I think from a managerial perspective, of course, the business owner has to have a higher level of trust for their
Mm,
employees if they're going to create a remote work environment. Um, there's also just general resistance to change that I
yeah,
think maybe COVID forced people's hands a little bit where they had no
yeah,
alternative. Um,
yeah.
what's I'm going off script here a little bit, but what's your feeling long term for remote work? Because
Mm,
I
yeah.
I wonder if the social aspects of having a physical work environment, you know, the benefit of those may not be apparent with only 1 year of remote work. Everybody's kind of still in love with Zoom and remote work, but you think it's
Yeah.
going to catch up to us?
Well, I don't. I think that remote work is now an option, whereas before in some businesses, I don't think it was. And I think that depending on how the business structures their organization around remote work, it could succeed and it could be something that we continue with. And what I mean by that, especially with the social structure, it is difficult to not get together. We're kind of pack animals. I joke about that all the time. My dog follows me around and I'm like, he's such a pack animal. But I think we all are pack animals. And so we want to be together and we want to have that interaction. And I know that, I've got friends that I'm like, oh, I really want to just go grab some coffee with them or sit down and talk to them and not have to do it through a screen. And I think that as long as businesses have times where people can get together and that can actually have this kind of social interaction. So whether it's, we're going to go to all remote now, especially for small businesses. There are service businesses that there may be a lot of employees and you could go to a remote setting and then say, but once a month we're going to meet at this place and we're going to have a staff meeting and we're all going to be together. Um, so I think if there are plans that are set up intentionally to allow us to get together once we can, to allow us to get together, I think that makes the remote work more sustainable.
It's very interesting times.
It is, it is, and then there's I've worked with a company that had 40 employees in North America, so they were actually in the United States and in Canada, and they get together once every 2 years. And they have one of the best cultures that I've ever seen in an organization, and they're completely remote across two nations. And so I think that it's doable. It's just intention. It's, are we being intentional with how we're interacting, with what we're saying, with the social interactions even over Zoom, and what are we doing to make our team feel like a team?
Yeah, yeah, it certainly takes work. It doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah, exactly. And intention, right? Absolutely.
So how did you become a consultant? What's your journey?
Hmm. Journey. I think it's been more of an adventure. I think that that my journey has been an adventure. So I was actually born into an entrepreneurial family. My grandfather owned a gas station and started selling recliners out of the gas station, and turned it into a furniture store. And so I grew up in retail furniture. And right before I was graduating from college, about 6 months before, my mom said, "Ah, I don't want to do this anymore," and sold the store. And so I started working for a major national insurance company. I did that for a while. I went back to school for a little bit, got some additional education on top of my degree, and did some other things. Kept in the HR and operations realm. So I kept doing HR and operations throughout my entire career ever since I was in high school, and continued to do that. Ended up at an ambulance service in the Denver area where they did not have an HR person. They had 125 people, and they basically had employee files, benefit broker, and a payroll company, but they didn't have HR structure. They didn't have an HR department. And so I built that HR department and continued working there for several years and worked my way up to VP of HR and then VP of operations. And at that point, I realized, wow, I miss my roots. I miss that small business. I miss talking to those small business owners and working in that environment rather than this company now that has 350 employees with multiple locations and all of those things. And I'm now in the executive level rather than kind of down getting my hands dirty. And so I left that company and opened Courtside right at the beginning, the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. Perfect time to open up a consulting business right as the recession started. Um, but when I did that, I knew to go to the SBDC to get my business plan and to get that all set up. And so I did that. And then after a few months of getting my feet wet in consulting, I went into one of the SBDC centers, the Denver Metro Center, and said, "Hey, can I volunteer?" And so I started volunteering back in 2008 with the SBDC, and then started speaking at various SBDCs around Colorado, and am now consulting with a few SBDCs around the state.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah,
great. What
yeah.
was your grandfather's shop called?
Rucker's Furniture. So it was Rucker's Furniture in Greeley, Colorado, and we were there for over 40 years. I think it was 44 by the time we sold the store. So I was going to be the third generation. So I worked there through high school and college, and then mom sold the store. So that's probably for a different webinar to talk about that whole episode. But
Very good. Very good.
okay,
Well, so
family
you're,
business. I've got family business background. I guess I can say pretty easily. Yeah.
it sure sounds like it. That's great. I was hoping that it was going to be something about like the driver's seat or something like this with furniture and a gas station, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
Oh yeah. No, no, no.
Um, so who's your ideal client? You mentioned that you've worked with obviously large HR departments and people who are just starting out. Who
Mhm.
do you like to work with the most, and what kind of client who's in, investigating the SBDC should look for you?
You bet. So the clients that I work with the most are business owners, managers, sometimes office managers who have the responsibility of HR, but they have no experience or training in HR. So they don't know what they don't know, honestly. They feel that weight of compliance and employee engagement and hiring and firing and discipline and managing day to day. They feel that weight of all that, but they're just not sure what they're supposed to be doing. What forms do they need? What is a handbook and what needs to be in it? How do I set up HR systems so they're um, functional within my small business, right? I've only got 3 employees. Do I really need an HR, handbook? What do I need? What do I need to set up? And so I work with those clients to put systems in place and to talk to them through the SBDC, how to get those systems in place and get HR manageable for them.
That's fantastic. And so someone could come with no experience. What kind of homework
Mm,
would you assign
yeah.
after a meeting or two with someone like that?
Sure. So it kind of depends on what they're coming to me for. And we can talk about questions that people are asking when they come visit with me here in a couple of minutes. But when they come to me, I think let me just take an example. Like a lot of people are talking about, do I hire independent contractors or do I hire employees? What do I do? What's the difference? What's right for me? And so there's a lot of information they can find out using the internet through that research to say, well, what is an independent contractor? What's the difference between an independent contractor and an employee? And how do I know maybe which one is right for me based on the definitions that the IRS or the departments of labor are giving me? And what do I need to do? And if they have that baseline knowledge, then when they come in and talk to me, we can actually dive deep into the particular position they're talking about. So I'm not spending necessarily the time educating them between what's an independent contractor and an employee, but we're taking that knowledge that they have already had, and then we're applying it to a particular position and having a deeper discussion about this position and what they're doing with that position and how they want it to, what's their end game? Where do they want their business to be, and what does that look like? And so we can have that deep discussion. And then a lot of times when people, after they finish talking to me, whatever the subject is, I typically give them some homework. I give them books to read or articles to read or, different links that they could go to or, other types of resources that they could be looking at that is either going to help them in a particular area where they feel that they need some more help or really cement some of the concepts that we talked about in our session.
Wonderful. Do you find people changing their classification of a particular position quite a bit as a result of these?
Yeah, so there are two big things that I see when we talk about independent contractors and employees. A lot of startups are working with independent contractors, and so they're saying, "Well, I'm just hiring independent contractors." And what very few, or I guess I should say, what the majority of people don't realize is that there are guidelines that they have to follow for independent contractors versus employees and how they classify those people. And then once you say, okay, well, maybe it isn't an independent contractor, maybe it is an employee, then you've got to talk about what kind of employee is it? Is it an exempt or non-exempt? And what I mean by that is it exempt from overtime? Is it a salaried person, right? Or is it non-exempt from overtime? So it's an hourly person who's eligible for overtime. And what are the classifications of someone who's exempt? And so the government has given us, the state and federal government have given us resources to be looking at those things and saying, okay, you know what? I classified somebody as a salaried exempt employee and really they don't qualify. They don't meet any of the qualification criteria, so they're hourly employees. And where I see the switches, John, is mostly in that situation where they've got employees that they hired. So they hired them as employees properly, but then they misclassified them as an employee and put them in a salaried position, thinking that they could just do that. And they can't. So they've got to have some justification before they can make someone exempt. So that's where I see a lot of the changes.
Fascinating. And of course, people want to get that right. It's the right thing to do. And then I'm sure there's liability if your employees are misclassified or you're treating them in a way that's not in compliance with the law.
There is. There is.
Do you have a particular success story that you could share with the audience?
Sure. This was a client that I worked with a few years back. He came to me and he wanted to fire his sales manager. The sales manager was just not working out. They weren't working very hard. He wasn't exactly sure what they were doing. They'd come in the morning and then disappear, and they wouldn't answer their phone or they wouldn't look at email. They wouldn't answer texts. He didn't know really what they were doing. They weren't engaged, I think is a good way to say it. They just the business owner didn't feel the sales manager was engaged. And so he thought, you know what? I think I just need to fire them. So he and I talked about what he had done so far to change the sales manager's behavior. And the reality was he really hadn't done much, except get frustrated. He had just gotten increasingly frustrated with the behavior, maybe had a couple of conversations, but didn't really document anything, didn't lay out expectations, didn't have some difficult conversations, with the sales manager saying, you're not meeting my expectations. What are you doing? And so he and I worked through some plans and it included coaching and laying out those clear expectations and even worked through some written warning documentation, kind of some templates where you can, if it wasn't working, these are the things you could do. And he and I stayed in very close contact just to make sure that he had everything he needed. So the client reported back to me after about a month, 6 weeks, something like that, that the sales manager had not only improved his performance based on the coaching and the expectations that he had laid out and having more one-on-one meetings with them and huddles and all of the things that he implemented, but that he had, I think, quadrupled his sales. So the all of a sudden the client was just, he came in and he said, I don't even know what to say. Like I have more business now. I have to hire more staff to accommodate the sales that are happening in my business right now. And it just took a little millimeter shift, just a different way to approach that employee that was able to increase those sales.
That's a great story. That's I love it because it's exactly what you said earlier about here's someone who came to you for an answer because they thought they knew what they needed to know, but they
Yeah.
didn't know what they didn't know.
Yeah.
And, this was a leadership lesson, you know. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, congratulations. That's a good
But
story.
yeah, congratulations to my client, right? He did the work. We just sat down and talked about strategy, and I think that that's what I love about the SBDC is that i- you can see results from the strategy that we discuss with our clients. You can see, the ideas being put to being implemented and being put to work, and so that's very rewarding. And that's one of the things that I enjoy the most about working with clients is to see that change.
It's good. This also reminds me of a saying that I found on the internet about your profession: hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the
Yeah.
opposite. Your story there, it gives the lie to that expression.
Yeah, so let me talk about that just real quick, John, and I won't spend a lot of time on it. I won't get on a soapbox. I think I moved it out of here, so I wouldn't be on one today. But but the thing to remember is that you do want to hire slow. It's like getting married, right? You don't want to just hire somebody quickly because you need a warm body and they have a pulse. That's not where you want to go with it, right? But what you want to do is you want to hire them slowly, make sure they understand those expectations, make sure that they're doing the job that you wanted them to do. And then fire fast is a little bit of a misnomer because you want to go through some kind of progressive discipline conversation with them. You want to set them up for success. And once you realize that you've given them every opportunity to change their behavior and they still won't, and so you've made the decision to fire, then yeah, do it quickly. Otherwise, you're going to stay up and they're going to continue to drag the organization down. And you're not going to, you're going to stay up and not sleep, I should say. And they're going to continue to drag that organization down. So once you've gone through all the steps and done everything you can do, and you can honestly look yourself in the mirror and say, I have done everything possible to get this person to improve their performance and they're not doing it. I need to fire them. Then make that happen quickly.
It's good advice.
So a little bit,
Obviously, a
a
lot to
little bit of a
learn.
longer story there, right? A little bit, but yeah, it's important. Performance success is something I love, right? Getting people to do to getting things done through your employees and having conversations with them and dialogues with them and setting them up for success so that your organization is ultimately successful. That's the consulting that I love the most.
That seems like that's what motivates you the most and
Hmm.
keeps you coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to check our audience question panel here real quick. I see a comment from John Howard, whom you know.
Hi,
He's
John. I
also,
do. Hello, how are you?
he says, great conversation. So
Oh, well,
thanks, John.
thanks, John. Thank you.
Yeah. And if anybody else has any comments or questions, uh, please type them in. We're coming up on our 30 minutes here, and I do want to make sure that we keep to our time agreement. Let's see. What else do I have to ask you? What's what's the biggest challenge in your consulting right now?
Hmm. Well, I think with the new laws that went into effect on January 1st, the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, some of the wage order information that has come out. So the way that business owners have to do things differently and how that might conflict maybe with their historic ways of doing business. Um, I think that has been the most challenging to have those conversations with business owners and say, okay, here are the new rules, if you will. Here are the new laws. Let's figure out how to apply those in your business. And so handbooks need to be changed. Attendance policies need to be adjusted. Um, the job postings need to be done differently in Colorado. Job descriptions are now required through the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. So, historical records of wages, all of these things are coming into play now that business owners didn't really have to worry about. And so with many of the laws that came into effect on January 1st, they impact all business owners. They impact all employers, not just the larger ones. There are some differences with the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act and some paid sick leave accumulation that is going to be put off. But for the most part, these laws impact most employers. And so if you don't know about these new laws and if you want to learn more, get to the SBDC. Let's talk.
Appreciate it. I see a couple questions. Samantha wants to know,
Mhm.
what made you decide to consult versus to work for another company?
Yeah. I, I don't know, what should I say, Samantha? My personality. I think the idea of being able to control um, my environment and my schedule um, and being able to help people on this basis where I can go and I can speak and I can have appointments and I can one-on-one appointments and I can speak to large groups. Um, I, I feel like I can reach more people than if I'm just working for one company. And I feel also that I can look at the businesses that I'm working with and it's not an application process with me necessarily, but I definitely have discovery calls where I determine, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to work with this business and I feel a purpose with that business. So for my court side, my business standpoint, that's what I do. With the SBDC, I want to give back to the community, right? I want to be able to do something for community members. I mean, the fantastic thing about the SBDC is that it is free consulting and it's unlimited. And so you can get in touch with me this week and then next week and then the week after, and we can have conversations about those issues, and I can give you tips and tricks to implement at your business. So with the consulting clients that I work with outside of the SBDC, obviously we interact a little bit differently than at the SBDC, but the SBDC is just an opportunity to give back to the community.
That is great. Well, I see one more question, and it's a great one to end the show with because it's the $1,000,000 question.
Okay.
Denise wants to know, how can I get in contact with you?
Oh,
And
great.
yeah,
Yeah. John, you want to take that one? You want to give all the information there?
I would love to. So you can learn all about Courtney at her website, which is courtsidehr.com, courtside.com. And
HR.
the website,
Oops.
sorry,
Courtsidehr.com. Yeah.
courtsidehr.com.
hmm hmm
Yep. And she's in Broomfield, so you can find all the information there. You can also go to our website, northmetrosbdc.com. And if you go to consulting, you can read about all of our consultants, Courtney, and also our panel of experts in other fields as well. And you can book a free session using the links there. And I'll be sending you an email with all of this information after the show as well. So you'll have all that. You don't even have to write it down. It's coming to your inbox, Denise. So thank you for that question.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for coming on the spotlight today. This was
Thank
a
you.
great conversation. I learned a lot. I really appreciate your time, and I wish you the best and hope to get some new clients that
Well,
saw this and have some questions for you.
all right. Thanks so much.